Okay, hey everybody, Teching and Barry back again, and are you ready for this? Watch this. Oh yeah, check it out, it's the perfect fit. It's Jack D. Lantern. He's gonna be King of the Pumpkins. Okay, so yeah, episode 3 and episode 4, we have Tell No Tales, and the pirates are coming! The pirates are coming! Of the One Piece Netflix live-action series. These are Usopp's episodes, man. Usopp is now introduced into the story, played by Jacob Romero Gibson. And, yeah, let's see how this all shakes down. You know, it's funny, the first run-through I had of these episodes, it might have just been because episodes 1 and 2 were such a good introduction to the story. By the time we got to episode 3 and 4, the pace does change. It slows down a little bit, especially with episode 3, and then episode 4 is the final climactic battles between Luffy and Kuro, and everything comes to a head with that. Zoro fights Sham and Bucci, so all that stuff happens in episode 4, but I remember getting to episode 3 and being like, oh, okay, pace has slowed a bit. Meanwhile, episode 1 and 2 were like really fast-paced, like let's go. This one is kind of like, all right, now we can kind of settle a little bit, okay? But on the second viewing, I actually really enjoyed the episodes, and a lot of the changes they made, the small changes, when we're talking about like the setup of Syrup Village, as well as the actual business that Kaya's family was involved with, it makes a lot more sense as compared to the manga on this one, okay? There are some omissions here. Probably the most notable one is there's no Django in this. However, I'll get to it when I get to it, but I want to bring up that even though certain characters do not appear in Season 1, and I don't want to get anybody's hopes up, but it's not completely insane that those characters could show up later, just for the sake of the fact that they're, you know, already changing things from the manga and the anime. This was already the case, you know, when we started with the show. You know, it wasn't going to be a one-to-one. So if Django doesn't show up in Syrup Village, he could show up later. And in fact, there are a couple of hints that he was already cast, because we even see his wanted poster, you know, I think at Shellstown at one point. It was like when Luffy and Kobe were looking at everything, you see Django in the background. So there at least was an actor playing Django. They have the costume, if nothing else. And from what something Zoro brings up to Kuro in this episode, and then what happens at the very end of the episode where Kuro is at the end of it, implies there might be something more with his characters. So, yeah, obviously, if we're going directly off the manga, if Django doesn't appear here, then that kind of screws everything up for his story, but he could appear again. You know, there's something else with another character that doesn't appear in live action when we get to Arlong Park. So, we start this off with the Straw Hats still sailing on the dinghy, or rather the little sloop. Actually, Nami calls it a sloop this episode, so it is in fact a sloop that she stole from Buggy's crew, all right? So they're sailing around, and Nami now has the map of the Grand Line that they obtained from Shellstown, and they got through Buggy and everything like that, so they have the map. Nami's looking at the map. She's wearing her glasses, which is something that Nami, you see her wear her glasses in Skypiea. I think that's the only time in the manga and the anime you see her wear glasses. I think she wears glasses later in one of the openings after the time skip, but yeah, Nami does have glasses, like reading glasses, and they're very cute. So she's reading the map, and she has never seen, like, Reverse Mountain before. Like, she's looking at the map, and we see Reverse Mountain there as the entrance to the Grand Line, and Nami's just like, huh, I've never really seen that before. That's interesting. Keep in mind that the world is really big. You know, keep in mind now Nami in the manga, she already kind of had a decent idea, not like a huge idea, but she knew that, like, Reverse Mountain existed, okay? And then there was a mountain where she didn't really know how it worked, but she knew Reverse Mountain was there, and that the rivers, the streams of the ocean would go up the mountain and then down into the Grand Line, okay? But keep in mind, like, this would be like looking at a globe of, like, our Earth and being like, oh, this one specific region by the equator, I've never seen this mountain before. It's like, you know, the East Blue is pretty big, and, yeah, I mean, like, she has no idea how to actually enter the Grand Line, and we're going to deal with that later on when we get to it in Season 2. But she's looking at the map. Meanwhile, Luffy is working on their flag, because now they are officially a pirate crew, I guess. He has to work on the flag. So he shows off, of course, Luffy's version of the Straw Hat flag, which we have seen. It's pretty much ripped directly from the manga. And Luffy, very key difference, is the one to actually name the crew the Straw Hat crew. This was a change that I think makes perfect sense. In the manga, and you might have, like, it's like a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. But the first time they're actually called the Straw Hat Crew is by Smoker. Now, I don't think that's, like, Smoker was the one to call them that. I think it was something that brought to consensus through the Marines. Like, you know, when Luffy got his first bounty, like, when Luffy got his 30 million bounty, Smoker hasn't even met Luffy yet, okay? So I think it's like, okay, this is a pirate named Luffy. He has a straw hat. He has 30 million. You know, we have to call his crew something, you know, let's call them the Straw Hat Pirates, I guess. This also makes me think that a lot of pirate crews are actually not named by them, like, they don't name themselves, they're named by, like, the Marines or some organization, which might explain why we have so many pirate crews, like the Hawkins Pirates, that are just named after the person's name. You know, they're not really all that creative or anything like that. So it's a marketing thing. You gotta get going early, okay? You know, like, look at Beiji with the Fire Tank Pirates. He's like, I'm not gonna be called the damn Beiji Pirates. We're the Fire Tank Pirates, damn it. Now, that's a cool name, right? I did a whole video where I ranked the names. Yeah, but when it comes to Luffy, him naming the actual crew and naming the crew after his straw hat, I don't see a problem with that. It's a name, and obviously in the manga, when the Marines named the Straw Hats, Luffy was okay with the name. It wasn't like Luffy was like, hey, that's not our name. You know, we have a cooler name than just the Straw Hat Pirates. Like, no, the Straw Hat Pirates, that's what they are. That's like Luffy's prized possession. It would make sense that he would come to the conclusion of calling themselves that, right? Also, the fact Luffy did draw the Jolly Roger. It was very crude, but he did draw the Jolly Roger. It was the skull with the straw hat. So obviously the straw hat is the thing to focus on here, okay? So I have zero problem with Luffy naming his own pirate crew. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Luffy, he was training to be a pirate at Fuchsia Village for like 10 years. You don't think in those 10 years Luffy ever sat around after taking a break from practicing his gum pistol to be like, what's the name of my pirate crew gonna be? No, I'm sure he's thought about it plenty of times. This is the conclusion he arrived at. All right. So Zoro walks out and just looks at the flag, and Luffy's like, hey, what do you think, Zoro? This is our flag. And Zoro's very, you know, he's supportive. He just kind of looks at it and is like, it's unique. All right. Anyway, Nami, toilet's leaking. And Nami's like, what? Huh? We're on a ship. We don't have a toilet. Go over the side like everybody else. It's like, no. Like, there's a lot of water in there. I don't know what the problem is. And so Nami's like, wait, what? I love that reaction because it's like, dude, you're on a boat and water is filling up in the boat and Zoro gives zero shits. He's just like, there's water in there. I don't know, pipe must have burst or something. Call a plumber. I'm taking a nap. So Nami goes in and she's like, oh shit. And there's like water everywhere. So she has that little hidden compartment we saw at the end of the last episode with the little Den Mushy Bluetooth thing. So she opens that and the little snail is like coughing. He's like, salt water, not good for snails. So she tries to like use it. It's like, shit, it's broken. I have to go to a Den Mushy repairman, I guess. No, it's like, that's dead. I mean, it's pretty much very sick, right? So she's like, okay, guys, we're taking on water. We need to find a place to dock, like, immediately. And more importantly, we need to find a bigger ship because this isn't going to do it. If you want to go to the Grand Line, Luffy, this shit isn't going to cut it, okay? All right, so they're like, oh, okay, well, where do we go? And she's looking at it. She's like, okay, well, we have the Gecko Islands, so geography. Gecko Islands are close by, and Syrup Village is probably the closest village that would probably have something like that, so let's go to it. Okay, cool, great, fantastic. Okay, so moving over to Syrup Village, all right? So these are some changes that I'm actually really happy with, okay? Well, first of all, let's talk about Usopp, okay? Because Usopp actually makes his appearance in the beginning shot of the episode as we have, like, a various time jumps as, like, we start with Usopp as, like, a little kid, like, when he's 7, and he's, like, ringing the bell in the village, and he's like, the pirates are coming! And he's running through the town, and everyone's like, oh my god, the pirates are coming! I was like, oh, save the children! You know, all that kind of crap, lock their doors, whatever. But then we have Usopp again, that's, like, ringing the bell, and all the people are just like, oh, okay, pirates are coming, I guess, the last 4 times were all false alarms, but this time is probably true. And then finally we see Jacob Romero Gibson playing Usopp, you know, and he's just like, pirates are coming. But it's very clear at that point, he knows people aren't going to freak out. He's just doing it as part of his morning routine, you know, and so he's running through the town. He's like, batten down the hatches, man the cannons, hoist the sails. And all the people are just like outside, like, okay, sure. You know, and he bumps into Mr. Mornin. Mr. Mornin is a very minor character in Syrup Village. once again, blink and you'll miss him kind of a guy. But once again, they got his appearance exactly right. Like, you look at Mr. Mornin in the manga, he's an old man, balding head, glasses, and a mustache. That's how he looks in the live-action version. They went to the... That's the thing. It's like, look, even if we have a small, minor character that barely appears in the manga, that doesn't have a significant role, we're gonna make sure to get the costume right, okay? You could have taken just any random old dude to play Boodle in the last episode. You could have taken any random bald man to play Mornin in this episode. Nobody except the very hardcore fans would have noticed. But they went the extra mile to actually make sure the outfits and the appearance and everything was on point. Also, he wears glasses. So Usopp bumps into Mr. Mornin, and he's just like, Usopp, how long are you going to be doing this crap? You need to grow up, Usopp. You need to make something of your life. You need to be a baker like my son. Just like, he's like, don't worry, Mr. Mornin. I'll protect the island. Don't worry about it. I love the charisma that Jacob brings to Usopp. It's a very much like, as someone that grew up in a very small village in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains of Pennsylvania, I can kind of identify with Usopp a little bit here, you know what I mean? It's just like, this is a boring-ass town. You need to find something to entertain yourself. I picked YouTube. Usopp goes around pretending pirates are attacking. Whatever, okay? I like it. So, anyway, you see in the background a poster that has like a little advertisement, not an advertisement, like a notice, like news, like mention of a famous actress that has passed away. And that actress is, in fact, Victoria Sindri, who died and then was reanimated by Hogback and is on Thriller Bark. It's nice little things in the background that just like, oh, that's Victoria Sindri. And it's one of the ones, again, if you're a brand new viewer to One Piece, you're looking at that, you probably wouldn't even notice that in the background. But for the hardcore fans, man, that's an Easter egg that I really appreciate. I really do. Syrup Village as a whole has changed somewhat. So it's a lot bigger, for one thing, which is great, because the thing is, when we saw Syrup Village in the manga, it's like this little medieval kind of village. Like, the houses are very simple. There's not very many of them. And then all of a sudden, you have the biggest building in town is Kaya's mansion, which is this 3-story mansion on the edge of town. So it's like, I don't know, a smattering, let's use that as a word, a smattering of small medieval houses. There's at least a restaurant, it has a mayor, I guess, in the same way that, like, Fuchsia Village has Whoop Slap as a mayor. So it's just like the mayor of a small little town, and then all of a sudden, giant mansions. So a couple of things get brought up, like, first of all, like, so Kaya's parents that, live there, right? Like, where's the money coming from? This is a tiny little village. Like, it'd be one thing if Kaya's parents were, like, they were the mayors or, like, the lords that controlled the town or something, but that clearly wasn't the case in the manga. That was never mentioned. Yeah, they were just, like, ambiguously rich in the manga. It's just like, yeah, Kaya's parents are rich. They have a mansion on the edge of this little village we live in. And it's like, all right, okay, I guess it's possible that, like, Kaya's parents could have gotten rich somewhere else in the world and could have decided just to move to Syrup Village, like, it's just like, honey, look at this little village. It's tucked away in such a cute little corner of the East Blue. Let's build a mansion here and live here. Just like, oh, honey dear, that's lovely. Maybe something like that. So they changed it in this one. So Syrup Village is a little bit bigger, and also it has a thriving shipwright community where you have a bunch of docks and people building ships. Not as big as Galley-La, although you do see crates in the background that are marked Galley-La, because you all know Galley-La makes the best damn equipment in the entire world, right? So, yeah, it makes sense, though. Also, Mary built the Going Merry here. Okay, in the manga. So you can't just build a ship without proper, like, you need, like, more than one person to build a ship. You need proper, like, equipment to hoist things up. Like, building a ship is just, like, Mary doing it by himself, unless he's, like, super ripped. Mary takes off his little, his suit, and he's just like, boof! I've been building ships ever since I was a little lamb, and going around, right? But no, it would make sense that there'd be a shipbuilding community. And if there was a whole industry industry of shipbuilders on this island, on Syrup Village, then Kaya's parents were the ones that owned the company, and that's where all the money came from. It's like, okay, that's actually a change I like, because it's like, all right, the village is bigger, Kaya's wealth and her, well, I guess her parents' wealth is explained better on why she's the only person that has a 3-story house in this entire village. And it also makes sense that, like, all right, they're already building ships here. And Mary's job is changed, so he is like a lawyer. He's not a personal servant of Kaya, but he's a lawyer and kind of oversees the shipbuilding yard since Kaya's parents have passed away, okay? So I like those changes. And also, Usopp works at the yard, and I like that too, because number one, it kind of sets up stuff for later with Usopp being the guy that's going to repair the Mary as best as he can, and also later on, way later on in like Water 7, when Usopp meets Frankie and all the actual shipwrights. Yeah, so he's not really a shipwright. He doesn't fix a ship. He kind of lies and says he does, but he reveals he's like, oh, I am the first officer in charge of removals of crustaceans and various barnacles. So he scrapes bird shit and barnacles off the bottom of the ship. Usopp was given a job by Kaya's parents just because, like, okay, he needs something to focus his mind on something. We'll give him a part-time job down by in the shipyard. He could scrape off the barnacles and whatever. It's fine, right? So but I still like that because it doesn't really change anything about Usopp's character. It's not like they're making Usopp a master shipwright in this, or he's trained with it. But, you know, Usopp did have enough skills to, like, fix the Mary at least a little bit. Not in a very efficient way, but he was able to at least... He knows how to nail stuff. He knows how to take metal sheets and nail it to the freaking thing. He reattached the mast. Luffy ripped off the damn mast at, like, Reverse Mountain against Laboon, and Usopp was able to, you know, attach that back together, which couldn't have been easy, right? So just from, like, working in a shipyard and looking around and seeing how people, like, how actual shipbuilders built a ship, just from that alone, yeah, you're not going to know everything. You're not even going to be proficient at everything, but at least it's like, hey, I kind of saw somebody doing this with these, you know, different kinds of equipment and tools, so I kind of know how to do it too. All right, or at least I could try, you know? So I like that change with Usopp's character. Now, another omission that I'm actually happy with is they cut out the Usopp pirates in this entire live action. So those little kids that hung out around Usopp, that were the Usopp pirates, like the veggies, you know, like, I'm apple, I'm carrot, I'm, what was the other kid, potato or whatever. Yeah, I never cared for them in the manga, and just like, all right, so some little brats are running around, and just like, oh no, it's Captain Kuro, he's a pirate, we need to fight back and save Kaya. It's like, I don't care. I never cared about their characters, so you're omitting them. I care about Django. I'm upset Django's not in this, but if you're cutting out, like, the veggies, like the Usopp pirates, I think you're good. You're fine. Honestly. There's a great scene where Luffy is approaching the Mary's figurehead as it's, you know, already kind of built, because, you know, that's the whole point. They're taking the ship after they leave. So he's looking at the ship, and, you know, Luffy's like, oh, like, called over to it by a voice. And then he hears a voice, and it's Usopp's voice, and he's on the deck of the ship, like, cleaning it. And then, you know, that's a nod to the Klabautermon, and, like, eventually the Mary will speak if we get to that point in the story. So that's really nice there. Oh, there's also a scene where they're looking at, they're in Syrup Village before they go to the shipyard, and Nami's looking at the shipyard, and Zoro and Luffy are looking at the wanted posters, and they see Buggy's wanted poster, and Zoro is surprised and is just like, that clown was worth 15 million? That's ridiculous. I could have collected his bounty. And Luffy's like, yeah, well, you can't go to a marine base anymore after what happened at Shellstown, so you wouldn't be able to collect the bounty anyway. And Zoro's like, I guess so. And then he, like, rips off the bounty poster and, like, crumples it up and throws it down. So that's another thing. It's like, there's certain things that, like, I like that change, and there's certain things that I can kind of extend, and there's some stuff like, all right, Nami should have probably have heard of Reverse Mountain at least, and the fact that Zoro, as an experienced bounty hunter, which, by the way, we're actually focusing a lot more on Zoro being a bounty hunter in the live action than we did in the manga, does not know about Buggy's bounty, has never seen Buggy's wanted poster, the fact that it has, like, he's one of the highest rated bounties. It's like top 3 bounties in the East Blue. I guess top 4, but Kuro was supposed to be dead. So Arlong is number 1. And then we have Don Krieg at 17. And then we have Kuro at 16, who was apparently killed by, Morgan. And then we had Buggy at 15. So he's either the 3rd or the 4th highest bounty in the East, if you want to consider Kuro. So it really doesn't make any sense why Zoro would not have recognized his face. So it's like little things like that okay, that doesn't make much sense. Just a couple of things that don't make sense in an episode, or some mistakes or gaffes or whatever that happen in the background. I'm not going to be like, that ruins the whole story for me. That's just not how I am. There was that shot and I missed it the first time watching through it. Somebody had to point it out to me online. There was a shot in episode 1 when during the battle at Shellstown when Luffy and Zoro are fighting Morgan. Zoro does a roll on the ground, and the prop, he's wearing the Wado Ichimonji. It's not an actual sword. It's like a rubber prop, You could see the scabbard and the sword bend. So when Zoro rolls, and there was actually a YouTuber I watched yesterday that used After Effects to actually fix it. And it's like, okay, they messed up. That was a mistake there. But if going into further seasons, they will now be aware of we missed that shot where the Wado bends like a rubber sword that it clearly is in that shot. Okay, so next season, pay more attention to shit like that. There you go. Not really that big of a deal for me. I didn't even notice it the first 2 times watching it, but it is there. And there's a couple of other things throughout here. In this episode, Mary pulls out a pocket watch, right? And is checking the time. And once again, did not notice this the first 2 times. I didn't notice this until somebody actually went through each episode and like frame by frame examined everything. He's like, I noticed that. So when Mary pulls out a pocket watch, there is a moment where you see it and it says made in USA. Which, by the way, that one I'm not really upset about at all. Because there is a canonical United States of America parallel in the One Piece world. That does exist. It's called the Bellwood Kingdom, but you could say the Bellwood Kingdoms, they have an area called the USA. USA is part USA. USA's part of the Bellwood Kingdom. That's where Mary got the pocket watch. He ordered it from the Bellwood Kingdom from the company called USA. Made by USA. There we go, USA. I'm all right with that. I'm okay with that. There's an American One Piece. It exists, all right? There's a France. There's a Spain. All these places are confirmed to exist. There's a Mexico. There's a Japan. That's Wano. Venice, Italy. That's Water 7. So I'm all right with little stuff like that. I'm okay with that. So we have that scene there, and we're going to get a little bit of Buggy throughout this episode. I'll just cover Buggy stuff right now. Buggy manages to get back to the tent after the whole events, after being bazookaed away by Luffy in the last episode. He's going through all the chests, getting his, body parts back and everything. All of his crew left him. And then he has a special guest. Karubi arrives from the Arlong Pirates. And Karubi's like, hey, clown, Arlong wants a chat. And you can tell that Buggy is when he says Arlong, Buggy is like, oh, Arlong, that's, you could tell that he's a little afraid, but he's just well, you could tell Arlong, I don't take requests. And he takes some knives and he tries to stab Karubi. Karubi jumps and uses Fishman Karate, the shockwave to, knock Buggy on his ass. All right. So, and then in a later scene, I'll just do that now, Arlong shows up in this episode. So, this makes sense because we kind of have to establish Arlong early on. So, in the original story, Arlong was working his way up to take over the East. In the live action, he essentially already has. Well, if Arlong has already taken over the East, and he has the highest bounty in the East and everything like that, he has to sort of exert his dominance, as it were, you know what I mean? And if that's the case, if he already runs the East, then he's got to keep tabs on people like Buggy, who have 15 million berries, who are kind of up there, and he's like, hey, you ransacked Orangetown, and you didn't give my crew any tribute. That's not cool. You're working in the East, you're running jobs in the East, you gotta pay tribute to me, because I'm the big fish in the East. You get it? And so, it's a really funny scene, because I love to see more Buggy, and Buggy is throughout the entire live action. He's like, oh, Arlong, baby, I wasn't trying to mess with you. I'm just small potatoes. Hey, it's that Straw Hat Kid. He's going around saying he's going to be king of the pirates, and he's looking for a map to the Grand Line. He's talking, there was a line that Jeff Ward says as Buggy. He's like, he's talking shit about getting the One Piece. That's one of the best ways I've ever. He's talking shit about getting the One Piece, and Arlong. Actually, we get to hear Arlong's take on the One Piece. The One Piece, I don't think it really doesn't get brought up that often as like name dropped as the treasure in the story. It's been name dropped a lot more recently, like in like recent arcs and chapters, because we're kind of getting near the final saga here. But early on, like, it was a far cry, few and far between, that we would actually hear a character mentioning the One Piece directly, okay? And it's always a big deal when it happens. But it was kind of nice to hear Arlong's take on the One Piece. You know, is Arlong interested in this or whatever? And Buggy mentions it, and Arlong is like, the One Piece. Just an excuse for humans to spread their filth across the Grand Line. And it's like, yeah, that's about probably what Arlong's take on that would be, you know what I mean? And so he's like, I'm getting that map, and then I'm going to go take care of the Grand Line. We learn more about Arlong's character later, obviously, from the manga. But, yeah, this is something like, I've conquered the East, and now Arlong wants to go and have another shot at the Grand Line, as it were, now that he's built up power in the East and everything like that. But, yeah, he takes Buggy with him, and that's going to be set up for stuff that's going to happen later that I don't want to reveal yet. If you haven't, I'm only up to episode 3 and 4. Okay, so, they meet Usopp. The Straw Hats meet Usopp. Luffy and Nami have a conversation, and because Nami is just like, yeah, there's no way we can afford. We don't have any money. We cannot afford any of these ships, so we're gonna have to steal one. Luffy's against stealing one, and it's like, we're pirates. Just like, that's the kind of what we do. It's like, yeah, but a ship is different. A ship is special. You can't just steal a ship, right? And that's when they run into the Mary, and they run into Usopp, and they bring it up like, hey, we want a ship. And Usopp, of course, being the guy that he is, you know, he lies, but he's the kind of dude that's just like, oh, I know a friend that could help you. She's loaded, like super rich. She could probably get you a ship. And he's like, oh, okay, let's go see her. And Usopp's like, oh, yeah, sure. Like, you're actually gonna, okay, yeah, let's go, right? So they go to Kaya's mansion. Kaya's mansion set is really nice. So pretty much like with last episode, Buggy's, the whole episode takes place inside of the tent. The entire battle and scenes and everything like that, all the fights, all the major events occur in and around Kaya's mansion, which I like that too. I honestly do. And I keep saying, like, in this list, like, oh, I like this change. I like this change. Dude, I'm sorry. I like the way that Syrup Village looks. I like that they set it up as a shipbuilding town. I like the fact that the veggies were omitted. I don't like the fact that Django was cut, and I think you could have fit him in, but it's fine. They do kind of reference him later. But the finale of Syrup Village was always kind of a sort of story arc for me, even in the manga. I haven't really gone back and reread it all that much. But the finale of that arc taking place on, like, the shore, you know, like, let's go down to the shore and fight the pirates. It's like, that was always just kind of like, okay, they go down to the shore and fight the pirates. Here, it's like in this mansion that has this beautiful set and all these different rooms, and they really went into detail, like the kitchen and the entrance with, like, the grand foyer, the grand staircase, the dining room, the dressing rooms, Kaya's bedroom. They all look, there's like secret compartments, like servant passageways to go through the mansion. The outside is this massive garden. They actually have various shrubbery that are designed after the Island of Rare Animals, because we skip over the Island of Rare Animals. We see it on the map. We see it at the end of the episode, Island of Rare Animals, but they don't go to it yet. In the manga, they went to the island before Syrup Village without Usopp, and in the anime, they go after, and they meet Gaimon. So Gaimon's not included here, but you see an homage to him. You see the various rare animals, this massive garden area. There's these lily pads, like stepping stones, lily pads that you can walk over on top of this garden. So it looks really cool. They put a lot of detail, like all the budget for these episodes, kind of like the set design went into the mansion and the garden, and it's like, cool, great. That's a lot of cool stuff we could do with that. There's a big well in the center that Zoro is going to get thrown down later, and we saw that shot in the trailer. So Usopp takes the crew over to the mansion. He's like, oh yeah, Kaya, she's a friend of mine. She's her parents used to run the shipyard, and then they passed away, so she basically does now, and she might be able to hook you guys up with a ship, and you should be good, okay? So they arrive at the mansion. They go in through the back way, and Nami is talking to Zoro here, and Nami very clearly is giving her opinion of people of the upper class, and she's just like, you know, rich people only care about themselves, they only care about their belongings, and they don't really need all that stuff anyway. So I'm going to steal this place, and you know, I'm going to rob this place. And then Zoro's like, oh, you're going to rob it blind? And Nami's like, oh, maybe a little blurry. So it's like, that's like, lines like that I think are pretty clever. I don't think those are cringy or anything. I thought that was actually pretty funny. There's a couple of lines throughout this series that is like, all right, that's a little cringy, but like that one was actually kind of clever. I like that one. It's kind of like a sassy, kind of sarcastic thing I can hear Nami saying, you know? You're going to rob the place blind? Maybe a little blurry. I'm like, okay, I could see Nami saying that. So in this adaptation, Kuro and Kaya kind of come out together, you know, to the yard to meet Usopp and Luffy and everybody, as well as we see Sham and Bucci here. Sham and Bucci in the manga are the Neonbon brothers that are members of the Black Cat crew. They don't show up until much later when the Black Cat pirates actually arrive at the island. In this adaptation, they're basically the servants for Kaya. So it's not just Kuro that's working undercover here that's trying to steal all the money. He also has help from his former pirate crew. He has Sham and Bucci. In this adaptation, Sham is played by a woman, and so clearly they're not the Neonbon brothers. Bucci is still played by a man. Bucci is the cook or the chef of the manor, and Sham is masquerading as the maid. Okay. By the way, I love Sham's hair. The blue hair with the swirls and like the big bow tie. That's kind of like Sham's outfit in the manga. If you look at it, it's like a giant like bow tie, but they make it work here. It's like I really like the outfit. Okay. And then Bucci has like the hair kind of up like this, kind of like a cat. Kuro. He's played by Alexander Maniatis. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. But he is on point with this. Like, just like how Jeff Ward looks exactly like Buggy. Yeah, this guy looks exactly like Kuro. They got the outfit down. They got the hair down. The outfit looks exactly like it does in the manga. It even has those symbols on it that Oda confirmed later to be poop. You know, these like little symbols that kind of look like really stylized, like a really stylized poop emoji. And yeah, he's like, yeah, they're poop because he's a bullshitter. I love Oda's sense of humor. He's got that. He has the gloves. He's very prim and proper, almost like robotic with the way that Kuro moves. Or Klahadore, I should say right now. Klahadore. And he's just like, ah, yes, Mistress Kaya. I would not recommend Usopp and his friends be here. Your health is in quite a pickle at the moment. You know what I mean? I like the way he acts and operates. It's very, you can tell he's very robotic, but also it's just like, you get the impression of like, I hate being a butler. This is infuriating. I wish I could just slit her throat and be done with it. Anyway, time for supper. So, yeah, the acting choice on this, perfect. Okay, so things play out a little differently here because we're kind of skipping over a lot of the big parts of lag. We got to get into the mansion. Oh no, Klahadore's here. Usopp punches him because he shit-talks his dad, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that kind of gets cut over and we got to get moving with this, okay? So since Kaya's already here and she's very sickly, she's like, oh, and by the way, it's Kaya's birthday. That's why Usopp's like, oh yeah, come on, no, see Kaya. It's also her birthday. I want to give her a present. So it's Kaya's like 18th birthday, or the eve of her 18th birthday. So Kaya's there with Klahadore, and she's just like, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if they could come for dinner tonight? Because, you know, it's my birthday and everything. And Klahadore is just like, I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, fine, we'll do it. You know, just take a bath, you all. You're filthy. You know, take a bath and, you know, go and change into proper dinner attire. And, you know, we served at 7, you know, whatever. Okay. So, and then all the Straw Hats are kind of invited in. You know, maybe it's just because I'm playing Baldur's Gate a lot. But I'm getting the impression of a lot like what if scenarios or like choose your own path kind of thing. Where it's like you meet like imagine this played out like a scenario in D&D or in Baldur's Gate where it's like the crew shows up at Kaya's mansion and Klahadore and Sham and Bucci are all there, and it's very obvious just by I mean, this is a thing in the manga too, just by looking at Kuro you could tell he's the bad guy. Like, it's so obvious. It's not even supposed to be like he's this charming butler. Like, everybody reading it knows this guy's the villain, obviously. So it's like you have the option, like, you're a bad guy, attack the butler, and things go kind of like they do in the manga. Or it's like, no, accept the dinner plans and see where this leads, you know? And it's like two completely different paths. That's how I kind of view this, all right? Like, it would be a very, like just imagine the way it would have panned out in the manga if instead of, you know, the Straw Hats kind of breaking in the mansion and then, you know, Kaya's inside, imagine if Kaya walked outside with Kuro. Kuro or Klahadore probably would have behaved a little differently in that scenario, okay? All right, but if it was just, if Kaya was inside in her bedroom and, you know, Klahadore came out and saw Usopp around the grounds with a bunch of these random people, it would have probably played out a lot like in the manga, just like, get out of here, we don't want you here, you know what I mean? You know, something like that. So that's the situation there, but I really like that change. So they go inside and we get to see the whole mansion and everything like that, and we get to see the Straw Hats planning, getting ready for dinner. So they take a bath and they're in the little dressing room. The dressing room looks cool. All these different outfits are like hanging from the ceiling, and there's these cool like red and, you know, like lighting in the background and stuff. It just like a really cool dressing room set. Nami wears a bunch of different outfits that I think are from various cover pages and tankobon covers and everything, and she's like, how do I look? And Luffy's just like, you look like Nami. And she's like, just like okay, trying to get a compliment out of Luffy. Like, Nami, I'm sorry. Luffy's not going to be like, my God, your beauty radiates like a million suns. You know, that's not going to be Luffy. He's just going to be like, oh, you're Nami, but in a blue dress. Now you're Nami in a red dress. You know, like that's going to be Luffy's reaction to that there. Zoro comes in and he looks at all the clothing and Luffy's like, oh, Zoro, what are you going to wear? And he's just like, something black. It's like, okay, all right, there we go. Okay, so Kuro, let's talk about him now. All right. Kuro's plan in the manga is really stupid, all right? And the thing is, like, there's a bunch of different ways that it's all the plan could work if you connect certain dots. But Kuro's plan in the manga is so scattershotted, all right? So let's just do a little bit of a recap here, okay? Kuro's plan, this is Kuro's story in the manga. If I'm getting anything wrong, please let me know. Kuro used to be the captain of the Black Cat Pirates. He got sick of it after a while because he was like being chased around by Marines and there was no end to all of his like suffering and anxieties. So he's just like, okay, I'm done being a pirate. So one night he attacks a Marine ship and kills everybody on board except for Morgan. Okay, he's the only Marine he leaves alive. And he has Django use his hypnotism to hypnotize Morgan into thinking that he had captured Kuro of 1,000 Plans. Okay, they take their shipwright who looks kind of like Kuro and like give him over to Morgan and they hypnotize him like, you captured Kuro. And just like, I captured Kuro. I'm like, okay. And then they execute the shipwright and then Django becomes the captain of the Black Hat crew and leaves with Sham and Bucci and everybody. And then Kuro decides like, all right, I'm done. I'm going to leave and go and make a new life for myself. Okay. So then he fabricates this whole backstory of like, oh, I was working on a merchant vessel and I made one mistake and they kicked me out and I'm just a traveling, vagabond, or I'm just a, traveling drifter or whatever. And he winds up at Syrup Village and he collapses in front of the mansion and Kaya's parents welcome him in and he becomes, the butler and he's very trusted and everything like that. Kaya's parents die of natural causes. And Kaya's sickness is just a natural thing in the manga. Like, Kuro had nothing to do with any of that. Kuro did not kill Kaya's parents, and Kuro did not poison Kaya or make her sick or anything like that. It was just her frail nature, okay? And the plan was, like, okay, I'm going to gain the trust of the townspeople, and then I'm going to not kill Kaya. Like, that wasn't, I don't think part of the plan was killing Kaya in the manga. I don't think it was. There was a scene in the anime where they make it look like Kuro's like, maybe I should just kill Miss Kaya right now. But then he's like, no, I shouldn't. But that's not in the manga. That was just in the anime, right? So it's like, all right, so you're just waiting for Kaya. I guess the plan was get Kaya to sign everything over to Kuro in her will and then wait for Kaya to die of natural causes. Not die of natural causes, and then collect all the money, and then I don't know what Kuro was planning on doing with it after the fact, if he was planning on, like, moving to another town or staying in the mansion. I don't know what Kuro's endgame here was, okay? He wanted the money, but he was going about it in a very strange way. And it's just like, in the manga, I think it's stated by Kuro, like, oh, I had to wait for Kaya to die of natural causes. I had to make sure there was no suspicions on my end. And it's like, you're Kuro of 1,000 Plans. You couldn't make a death look like an accident. It's just like, oh no, Mistress Kaya fell down and hit her head off the stairs. Well, I tried to save her. Oh, she's dead. Okay. If you've gained the trust of the townsfolk, it'll probably be fine. So, in the live action, I think they just connected the dots properly, where it's like, okay, Kuro is actively poisoning Kaya. Like, all right, good. I think that is a way that makes more sense. Poisoning Kaya so she will die, and then you will receive the deed to the shipwright business, and you will have all the money. Still the same effect, but a lot more streamlined. I don't remember exactly in the live action. I don't remember this. Okay, I remember it the first time watching it. Is it not implied? Because Kaya mentions that her parents were killed at sea in the live action. I don't think it was ever mentioned in the manga or the anime how they died. So it was like, oh, they died at sea. But I think isn't there a line later on when Kuro is like going crazy and like trying, like stalking and trying to like murder Kaya in the room? Isn't it like there's a line that he says that's like implies that he killed Kaya's parents? Because once again, I'm okay with that because that would make sense. It's just like, all right, instead of like Kaya's parents died naturally and Kaya just got sick and I'm just waiting for everything to fall into place. It's like, no, Kuro is taking a much more active role rather than an inactive role here, where he's not just waiting for everything to fall into place. Kuro in the live action is like, no, I'm gonna seep into the mansion, and Sham and Bucci are here. They came with me from my pirate days, and we're gonna wait for the moment, and then just like, oh yeah, he killed Kaya's parents. Ah, such a tragedy. And then we're gonna poison Kaya herself, so she'll eventually die, and then we get all her shit. All right, there you go. I mean, you could also bring up a lot of questions like, why doesn't Kuro Kuro could easily just rob the place in the middle of the night and pin it on somebody. Like, honestly, he could just take all the money right now and then just I guess he's looking for. That's the thing. He's like, I guess in the live action, he's trying to become the head of the shipbuilding industry. Once again, it's the same thing like in the manga, though. Like, he's trying to gain a lot of money, and I'm not sure what the exact reason is. If he's just trying to live in the mansion in luxury by himself, or if he's trying to buy his own mansion somewhere. I guess maybe that's the plan. Well, whatever. It's more streamlined, more active approach in the live action, at any rate, okay? So they're making like poisonous blue tea for Kaya, and then they're making this poisonous blue soup that kind of looks like frosting, and just like, oh, this is, we'll give this to Kaya and she'll get even more sick. And the idea is she's turning 18, so we'll kill her when she turns 18, and then everything will be transferred over to Kuro, I guess. So Mary makes an appearance at this dinner party, and like I said, Mary is not a servant of Kaya in this. He dresses the same, but he's a lawyer for their family. He's handled Kaya's parents and their whole family's finances and the shipyard and everything like that. Makes sense that he would run the shipyard because he was the one that's like, I have this ship design I really want to get built, and so I'll have the people, and I'm sure Mary chipped in as well on the figurehead and everything, but makes more sense how the Mary was actually physically built, okay? So Mary's there, and he looks pretty cool. His outfit looks fine. I've always had the impression that he was a mink. Later on when we found out about minks, that he wasn't a full-bred mink. He was like, a quarter mink on his mom's side or something like that. In the One Piece world, because we have so many other, like we have giants and long arms and long legs and fishmen and merfolk and minks and everything like that, I always imagine like, well, okay, if you have all these different species out there, then, and they're capable of like mingling with humans, as it were, you would get like, you would get like half human, half giants, or not even half human, half giants, but you would get humans that have giant blood or fishman blood or mink blood in them, like Whitebeard, for example. I think this is how it's explained how a lot of characters in the One Piece world are like really big. Like Whitebeard's this towering dude, and then Kaido even more so, where Kaido has like ancient giant blood in him, like Oni blood, and then like maybe like far back, like Whitebeard's grandpappy was a giant or something. Like you can kind of see that, right? I kind of see that with Mary. I see Mary as like, I'm 1/8 mink on my mother's side, or something like that, even if he might not be aware of it. But it's like that's where the sheep aesthetic comes from. At least that's my opinion of it. Maybe it's just a costume. I'm not sure. So it's the dinner party. Luffy, Zoro, and Nami are all wearing outfits that are from like cover pages and tankobons and stuff like that. Nami is wearing like her Chinese dress, and Zoro and Luffy are wearing like their black outfits from like Luffy has a black vest on that he was wearing in one of the tankobon covers. It looks, I think it's volume 5 or 6. They look pretty sweet. They go into the dinner, and Luffy of course has a moment where he like jumps up on the table and is really bombastic because he's Luffy, of course. And they do a lot more setup here, like later on, like Nami and Kaya kind of develop a friendship, which is nice, and we don't really get to see that in the manga or the anime at all, so they have moments where they sit down and talk. There's a moment after dinner where Luffy and Zoro and Usopp are all hanging out in the kitchen, and they're talking about like Kaya, and it's like, oh, is that your girlfriend or something? And it's touched upon here in a way that I actually really like, because in the manga it is very clear that Usopp and Kaya like each other, and they kind of have feelings for for one another, and it's just kind of not really addressed. And this might be just because Oda kind of tries to avoid the romance subplots if he can, but here it's just like it's so obvious, like you have to address it. And yeah, at the end of the arc, at the end of the episode, at episode 4, Kaya and Usopp kiss before, you know, they leave and go out to sea. And I'm like, okay, that's good. That's not even like, what? It's like, no, clearly when Usopp is done with his adventure with the Straw Hats and returns to Syrup Village, him and Kaya are gonna get together. Like, Kaya is in love with Usopp, and she is clearly like training to become a doctor, and like he's like waiting for him to come back. There's even a cover page where like after the 2 years, Kaya is like training to be a doctor, and a bunch of these like suitors are like, oh, Miss Kaya, please marry me, you know, all that kind of stuff. And Mary's like fending them off or whatever, and then Kaya is just like, it's okay, I'm already spoken for, you know, it's like that kind of shit, right? So it's very clearly Kaya and Usopp like each other. Them kissing is, and I'm sure Oda signed off on it, but it's like everybody knows, you know what I mean? It's pretty obvious. So I'm trying to think if we can just jump right ahead. So we have the end of episode 3 is the big moment where everything is like, oh, Kuro is actually the bad guy, no shit. Where he confronts Mary in the wine cellar, which is also a good set. And we see various brands of alcohol that are like from One Piece chapters in the background. And so, you know, Mary confronts Kuro, and he's just like, Klahadore, I really must speak to Miss Kaya about this whole ordeal of signing the shipbuilding business over to you. It is highly unorthodox, after all, since you are not a member of her family. And Klahadore is just like, oh, of course, Mary, but you don't need to talk to Miss Kaya. I am the one, of course. It is our wish. And Mary's like, okay. And so he turns to leave, and then that's when Kuro uses his high-speed movement technique. It's kind of like a diet version of Soru, and moves around, and like the high-speed works pretty good. It's actually kind of scary, and there's this really good stinger that plays whenever Kuro reveals his nefarious nature. It's like, and it works. It really works, okay? So he's like, Mary's like, I will speak to Miss Kaya about this, and he turns around, and Kuro's like there. So it's like he's right there, and he turns around, and he's there. He's like, whoa, okay. And then Kuro likes to play with his food, as it were, so he kind of zips around the room a little bit before finally just ramming his, clawed knife hands like right through Mary's heart and kills him. So Mary dies in this. Mary just straight up dead, okay? Which I think that, like, yeah, there's not a lot of death in the One Piece manga. Characters almost always recover from most injuries, and maybe when doing the live action, it's like, okay, look, if we keep doing this, like, all the time, we're like, oh, he got stabbed, but he's fine. He got slashed, but he's fine. He fell down a mine shaft, but he's fine. You know, there has to be maybe a little bit more death in here, so sorry, Mary, you had to die. And because of that, at the end of episode 4, Luffy names the Going Mary in honor of Mary rather than it just having the name to begin with, okay? Which that one is, I can kind of take it or leave that one, like how the Mary got its name. You know what? I've always been a little... Whenever the Mary was having its big swan song at the end of Eni's lobby, right? And it was being, you know, the funeral for the Mary. It's always felt a little odd to me that, like, we didn't cut to see Mary in, like, the East Blue, right? Like, as, like, the Mary was burning, we have all the Straw Hats, like, weeping and crying, and Dear Friends by Triplane is playing in the background, right? It's so sad. And I always thought, like, maybe you could have had one scene where we cut back to the East Blue where Mary is, like, at Kaya's mansion and is like, oh, Miss Kaya, yes, how are you doing today? Oh, you're feeling much better? Well, I'll get your dinner in a moment. And he's just there, like, writing in a book or something. And then all of a sudden, he just has a feeling of dread, or, like, a mirror cracks in the background. And just, oh, why do I all of a sudden have a feeling of dread? Because Mary's, you know, and he's the one that had, like, put his figurehead, like, that, the whole point of the figurehead was because of Mary, right? So Mary's dead in this version, so I guess it's like, okay, his spirit lives on. Mary will become the Klabautermann that attaches. It's like, it's okay, Straw Hats, I'm a ghost now, attached to the ship that I loved. Let's journey. I was like, okay. He's like, all right, if you're going to do that, you're going to do that. All right. Mary shows up as the Klabautermann in season 5. I was like, all right, we'll see how that goes. All right. So, trying to think here, what else is going on? Okay. So Zoro and Usopp kind of go to confront Kuro. They go down in the wine cellar too, and then Kuro's down there, and they see Mary's corpse, and they're like, "Oh my god, a corpse!" And Zoro's like, "Oh my god, a corpse!" And so he takes out his swords, and then Kuro shows up, and he reveals himself to be, like, "I'm a bad guy the whole time." And oh yeah, earlier in the episode, Zoro, like when they're getting ready for dinner, Zoro's like, "I know you from somewhere. Have we met before?" He's like, I've seen your I've seen something. I've seen your face before." And Kuro's like, "I highly doubt that, sir." And Zoro's like, "Funky bar on Mirror Ball Island," which is a really fun sentence to say. And Kuro's like, "Funky bar? I would never be at such an establishment." So that's Mirrorball Island is where Django hangs out, because it's Mirrorball Island, right? You dance the night away. So I'm thinking, yeah, Zoro was at Mirrorball Island at one point, and at one point Zoro was in the bar drinking, and he saw Django and Kuro having a meeting, because that's like Django's probably like, he's like, "Hey Kuro, come to Funky Bar at 10 o'clock. I want to go over some shit with you." That kind of stuff, right? So I think Django might still show up at some point later, okay? Well, anyway, yeah, they mentioned Funky Bar and Mirrorball Island there, okay? So Zoro's like, "I thought I knew you. You're Kuro of 1,000 plans. You were thought to be dead, but you're still alive, so I will collect a bounty." So Zoro and Kuro fight very briefly in the cellar. And, Zoro turns and is like walking toward Kuro, about to fight him. And then Sham just takes a wine bottle and just cracks it over Zoro's head and knocks him out. And for anybody out there saying that, like, "Oh, that would have never..." Okay, look. If you go back into East Blue, you will see Oda handicaps Zoro a lot. He takes him out of the action a lot, because it's like, unless he did that, then Zoro would just kill Kuro right there, probably. So when they're fighting Buggy in the manga, when Buggy separates his body, Zoro is distracted by that, and then Buggy stabs him in the kidney. Zoro's like stabbed and bleeding out, and he's taken out of the arc for a while. In this version, he tries to get up a cliff in the manga, and he slips on oil, and he can't get back up, and that handicaps him a little bit. So getting cracked over the head with a wine bottle, I mean, like, isn't anymore. It's like Zoro was distracted by something. He was focusing on a fight, and then gets hit in the back. Like, that's what happened with Buggy and getting stabbed. He couldn't get up the hill with the oil. Like, there's certain things that is like, oh, we have to take Zoro out of the arc so he can't immediately push the win button. You know what I mean? So they grab Zoro and Mary's body. Well, Zoro's not dead, but they pick him up. Now, why they don't kill Zoro, why they don't just do the double tap on him, that's another. It's like, okay, they probably should have done that, but whatever. They take Mary's corpse and Zoro's body, and they chuck it into the well. And that kind of leads into episode 2, where we're going to get Zoro's backstory, okay? So I'll just talk about that right now. So Zoro's in the well, and he's trying to get out. He has his swords. He's trying to get out of the well, and he's trying to climb it, and he can't. And while he's in the well, he reminisces about his past at Shimosuke Village, and Kuina, and Koshiro, and how he got the Wado, and everything like that. So this actually plays out very similarly to the manga. And then they add some, because that whole flashback, the manga and the anime, kind of like, it's various, like, different versions of it, like things they change around a little bit. They kind of combine them together, like they did a lot of things here in the live action. We get to see Koshiro. We get to see the sigil of the Shimosuke clan, the 2 swords that are together. They're all wearing that on the outfit. We see that in the banners. We see Koshiro, teaching his students and everything. We see Kuina and Zoro there. I think they're a little bit older than in the manga. They're like little kids. In this version, they're like a little bit like teenagers in this version. And so they have their fight. Zoro is just like, "Oh, you beat me, Kuina, but that's only because we use bamboo swords. We'll use real swords and fight." And Kuina's like, "Okay." And so then they use the real swords, and Kuina still wins. And then they have the line, Kuina has the line of, "Girls can beat boys, but no woman could beat a man." And that's like, Zoro's just like, "Don't talk like that. You are strong. You're going to be just as strong as you're going to be stronger than I am. We're going to be the greatest sword. You're going to be the greatest swordsman in the world." All that stuff, right? And then that leads into Koshiro going to speak to Zoro the following day and says, oh, by the way, the actor that plays Koshiro, great performance, actually manages to like go up to Zoro and be like, "Kuina." He like closes his eyes, and like a single tear like rolls down his face, like crying on cue, just like, "There was an accident with the stairs." No, he doesn't say with the stairs. He just says there's an accident. Okay, so This Kuina's death has changed depending on the medium. In the 4Kids dub, she was defeated by a rival sword person from another dojo that was just never explained or mentioned. And she was wounded to the point where she can no longer pick up a sword. In the manga, she falls down the stairs. Now, the explanation they give is she fell down some stairs. I always interpreted this as, after that conversation she has with Zoro about, like, you know, oh, I'm not going to get stronger than a man. I'm going to get older, but, you know, men are going to outperform me in every single way. I can never achieve my dream. Also in the manga, Koshiro, Kuina's father, directly tells her, you can never be as strong as a man. You'll never be able to surpass a man. Like, Koshiro says that to his daughter. In the live action, they cut that. They cut that line. But I always interpreted it as, with that line, Kuina goes home and, yeah, that very dark indeed. And I can understand why in the manga they have to, like, oh, she fell down some stairs, because Oda coming out and directly saying that Kuina just, you know, herself, like, that's a little bit, it's a shonen manga, that's a little bit intense, right? But that's the way I always interpreted it. I never interpreted it like, oh, Kuina accidentally fell down some stairs or whatever. Like, no, okay. But the backstory is largely unchanged, other than just like that one line from Koshiro they kind of omit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And so then as that backstory kind of crescendos, as Zoro is remembering going to the funeral of Kuina and asking Koshiro to have the Wado, and he gives the Wado to Zoro during the funeral rather at home. That's not really a big of a difference. In fact, it makes more sense there at the funeral. Like, I will avenge Kuina. I will become the greatest swordsman for both of our dreams. Please give me this sword. And then Koshiro hands the Wado over to him, right? And so that happens at the funeral, and as that's happening in the flashback, Zoro finally manages to get out of the well, and we see in the background as he's getting out of the well, we see Panda Man. We see a Panda Man shrub, like, hedge trimmed like Panda Man. So there's the Panda Man cameo. All right, what else is going on? Let's talk about Kobe and Helmeppo stuff really quick. So episode 3, Kobe is recognized by Garp. They're on his ship sailing to find the pirates that attack Shellstown. Kobe and Helmeppo are kind of arguing a little bit. Helmeppo is just like, screw this crap, I don't want to be a cadet, and he just starts going around and ordering random people around the deck. He's just like, you tie that knot, you move out of the way. Kobe's tying knots and he's being a good Marine and everything like that. Garp comes out and recognizes Kobe's talents. He's like, oh, who tied this bowline knot or whatever? You're going places, kid. And then he looks over to Helmeppo, and Helmeppo's like, nepotism will only get you so far. It's just like, I thought your dad would have taught you better. Here, learn how to tie a knot. And Helmeppo's like, oh, do you say? Kobe and Garp play Go. Takes out a Go board and starts to play Go as like tactics and everything, like military tactics and everything about what it really means to be a Marine. And then eventually Garp sends Kobe and Helmeppo in a small group of Marines to Syrup Village to see if the Straw Hats are there to kind of go around. And so when Zoro is knocked out in the wine cellar, Usopp manages to escape the cellar. He goes out through a window and gets away. And so he goes back to the village and, of course, tells everybody. It's just like, pirates are coming seriously this time. And he, like, knocks on Mr. Mornin's door, and Mornin opens it up, and he's just like, Usopp, go to bed! I love that line, because it's a line of just somebody that's had enough of Usopp's shit. Usopp's like, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. It's like, pirates are here seriously this time, Mr. Mornin. Usopp, go to bed! God damn it! Just like, okay. So that was a fun little line there. I like that. Eventually the Marines show up, and Usopp's just like, oh, the Marines, great. Pirates, mansion, Kuro. And so they go, and Kuro actually has a moment where he answers the door as Klahadore, the butler. And Kobe is there, and he's like, hello, sir. We were told that you were pirates. And Kuro is just like, yes, Usopp. He's not well, upstairs. Ever since his mother passed away, it happened right in front of his eyes, remember? And his father abandoned him, and he's been causing problems in the village. You can ask anybody in the village. Every day he rings the bell and talks about pirates coming. It's quite sad, unfortunately, for the poor lad, but there are no pirates here. And Kobe is like... It's like Kobe knows that this guy, and Helmeppo, of course, is in the background just like, oh my god, Kobe, there's no pirates here, let's go. Kobe's just like, you are so obviously a villain. It was like, imagine you ring the bell of the creepy manor on the edge of town and Clawhador answers. He's just like, yes, click. It's kind of like a Scooby-Doo trope where a lot of times in Scooby-Doo you'll have the creepy butler that's like 7 feet tall, like, yes. And it's just like, oh, he clearly did it. And it's just like, at the end of the episode, it's so obvious that he did it, he didn't actually do it. So that's kind of the impression I get from like Kobe talking to Kuro, just like, can I ask you just a few questions? Of course, anything for the Marines. It's like, oh god, you are clearly a villain, but I can't prove it. It's like, is that all? Like, oh my god. Usopp said you have knives for hands, like Freddy Krueger or some shit. Can we see your hands? I suppose. Usopp, I'm sorry. I'm with you. I'm with you, but like, I can't, you know? It's just like, I'm a Marine. I need more to go on than this, you know? And just like, it's an interesting scene. It's kind of a tense scene, honestly. So the Marines eventually leave, and Usopp runs off. He's just like, no, the Marines aren't going to help me. The pirates are coming. The pirates are... He's like, okay, really not helping your case, Usopp, but he runs off. Kuro goes back in, and the clock strikes midnight, and he's like, ah, yes, the plan can finally continue. Bucci, lock down the house. And Bucci takes out, like, this little steering wheel and, like, cranks it, and, like, these security shutters, like shut down the house. And then there's this, as the theme is playing, like, and there's like this split screen thing where Kuro and Bucci and Sham are all getting ready in their pirate attire. So like the house is locked down. It's time to kill Kaya. Time to cut with the pretenses with the soup or the tea. I'm just gonna kill her, you know. And then so there's a scene where, you know, Kuro puts on his gloves, and then Sham gets on her outfit with the, you know, the giant bow tie, and then like the she has like, I think it's like a mop, but it comes out and it's like a sword. And then Bucci comes out in honestly kind of a ridiculous outfit. His outfit's the most ridiculous, where Bucci's like this big guy that walks out with this like Phantom of the Opera mask and these kukri knives and the cape. It's very, it is how Bucci dresses in the manga. It's just, it's one of the outfits that looks more ridiculous in live action. But he comes out and he's just like, yeah, let's do this. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, hey, man, you guys are having fun. I mean, being pirates kind of precludes to being into cosplay, right? If you're gonna be the Black Cat pirates, you gotta dress the part, right? So he comes out wearing this big outfit and the cape, and he's just like, you know, scraping the knives together. Like, oh, it would be terrifying if you saw this guy coming at you with like the knives, like, you know, and they kind of do that. They do like the hissing thing. They're the Black Cat pirates. That's what they do, okay? And tries to rob the mansion. She ends up in Kaya's bedroom, and they have a little bit of a girl talk moment where they just discuss things about stuff. They talk about Usopp a little bit, but they also talk about other things. Like Kaya talks about her parents to Nami, and Nami learns that it's not just all about, like, not all rich people are just stuck up and, like, you know, just care about themselves and everything like that and their money, you know. So Nami connects with somebody there. And this also kind of connects back. I think there's a line where Kaya either asks, like, have you lost a loved one, or have you lost a parent, or something like that, like indicating like Nami's parents, like Belmere. And Nami actually says no. I was actually really interested in that dialogue, in that conversation. It's like, you know, oh, my parents died at sea and it was very tragic, you know. What about you, Nami? And he's like, have you ever dealt with the loss of anyone that you love? And Nami, I'm just like, oh, where is this gonna go? What's she gonna say? Because you can see it from both directions. You could say Nami being like, okay, it's just me and Kaya, there's nobody else around. I lost my mother when I was a little girl, you know. It could be something like that. But she says no, so she's still kind of putting up the wall yet, but it's indicating stuff for later with Nami's character, right? So Usopp shows up, is kind of frantic, like, Kaya, Kuro, pirate, you need to get out of here. We need to escape. Nami, seriously, bad guy coming. We need to get moving. You know, once again, not really helping your case, Usopp, but they eventually learn that, like, no, Kuro really is a pirate, and he is actually trying to kill Kaya, so we need to get out of here. So there's these servant quarters, which actually do exist in, like, historical manors and stuff, because you didn't want the manor guests to witness the servants walking around all the time, so they would have little tunnels that you would go through and, like, deliver the food. These actually existed, right? So that makes sense. So they're kind of like navigating, trying to get out of the place. They're trying to get to the East Wing, where it's kind of like locked off, and that's going to be like the final battle. Luffy, by the way, Luffy's kind of been taken out of this whole thing because he ate a bunch of the soup that was poisoned, and so he just gets knocked out. Oh yeah. By the way, yeah, with the Marines, yeah, that was a big thing I forgot there. So Kuro is like, oh, I am not a pirate, but the Straw Hat Boy you're looking for is drunk and passed out in the other room. I can hand him over to you Marines. And so he does that. And then eventually Luffy regains consciousness later as the Marines are leaving, and then he rushes back to the mansion. So just like with Zoro, in those early arcs, like getting Luffy and Zoro kind of like encumbered or handicapped so they can't actually go and deal with the threat like immediately, that's kind of a staple, all right, in the story, okay? It goes away the more the story progresses, but it is what happens early on, because it's like it's trying to not, like, okay, like if Zoro fought like if Zoro fought Kuro in the wine cellar, I think he could have beaten him, and so then you don't have the rest of the arc, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like that, and it happens in the manga. So I think we could just kind of zoom out to the final battle here. So Zoro fights against Shaman Buchi in the grand entrance hall of the manor. So you got the two staircases, so you got a lot of cool, like wire work going on. Zoro jumping around the mansion, clashing with Shaman Buchi. This is a really good fight. Buchi's outfit's a little silly, but it's a really fun fight, okay? There's a scene where Sham is, like, clashing with Zoro and steals the Watto, and Zoro gets this look of just, like... It's just like, you don't know what you just did. You touched the Watto. All right, you guys are definitely gone now. And it's, once again, it's hard to really explain like every aspect of the fight because you have to watch it to really understand. But this is probably, I mean, like, you have the Zoro and Mihawk stuff later, but this is a really top level fight for Zoro in the live action. Okay, just a lot of ways to like maneuver around this mansion and kind of clash with them, and so it kind of cuts back to it a couple times, but it's really good. Meanwhile, you have the scene where Kuro is kind of hunting Kaya. And this is the moment where he's just going around and Kaya's like hiding under a table with everybody. And Kuro's walking through and just slashing everything in the room apart and just stabbing things. And he's just like, oh, Miss Kaya, you know, all the times I had to listen to you moan and complain about your poor dead parents. Ugh! This is where I think that, like, I can't remember exactly if Kuro says something along the lines of, like, you know, I killed them, or he implies that he killed Kaya's parents. But even if he doesn't, even if he didn't actually do it, that is something Kuro would do. Even if he didn't really kill their parents, he would have been like, I killed them myself just to mess with. Like, I also killed Mary. He's like, oh no. You know, and so this is the moment where Kuro's really kind of going crazy with it. He's letting his real pirate nature beginning to shine here. And so Luffy arrives, and of course he shows up at the door. He's just like, oh, you're not going to hurt my friends, you know, let's fight, you know. And so Kuro and Luffy have a little bit of a conversation as Kuro's kind of zipping around the room. Luffy can't really follow him at first. He gets slashed a little bit, like right here. And we, once again, this is like the audience kind of learning that, like, no, Luffy can still be hurt. Slashing attacks, he's weak against, right? So we see like some marks here. We even see a scar in the later episodes, like, of that. Like they keep track of the fact that he got cut by Kuro there. So he talks about, like, Kuro is just like, oh, you want to be a pirate. You want to find the One Piece. I'll tell you what, when you become a pirate, you find nothing but anxiety. You're being chased after by Marines the rest of your life, no matter what you do. And I made that fool Morgan thing. Like, earlier on when he was talking to Zoro, he's just like, oh, I made that fool Morgan, and his ego bolstered it that he's the one he thought he killed me, so that just spread the rumor everywhere. So now everyone in the East Blue knows Captain Kuro is dead, you know, because of Morgan's boisterousness, his bravado, right? So Luffy thinks about it for a moment, and he's just like, wait a second, that's not what being a pirate is about. Being a pirate's not about ransacking villages, killing people, and perfect plans. Being a pirate's just about adventure. This actually ties back to something. It's a concept that wasn't really... I mean, it is adapted into the manga, but not in a direct way. in one of the Romance Dawns, I think it's the first version of Romance Dawn, so like the pilot chapters, there's two different kinds of pirates. There's the Morganeers and there's the Peacemains. The Morganeers are the pirates that go around and murder and plunder and pillage, matey, and burn towns down and steal all the gold. And Peacemains are more of like the adventure romantic side of being a pirate. You know what I mean? So Oda keeps that concept in the story. It's just they're not named that. But the concept is still there because there are pirates like Luffy that's there for adventure, and then there's other pirates like Kid that are there to cause a little bit more pain and suffering along the way, right? So Luffy kind of brings that up to Kuro. Like, you gave up your dream, and you have no right to call yourself a pirate. Pirating's about being an adventure and about being free. And Kuro's like, you'll never have freedom as long as you have a wanted poster with your name on it. So I like that comparison because Kuro's looking at this like more pragmatically, like, I don't want to be chased after by the Marines. I don't want to have a bounty on my head. It's annoying. It's stressful. There's a lot of anxiety there. Luffy, he loves that kind of shit, though. Luffy's just like, being a pirate, being free. When you have a bounty on your head, that just means that, you're doing it right. Kind of, right? Like that, yeah. Luffy gets excited when he's being chased after by the Marines. He's like, yeah, adventure! Because it's sort of like the establishment telling Luffy, like, we're gonna try to, prevent you from being free. And Luffy's like, but if I beat you, then I can be free. That kind of shit, right? So it's just you're not gonna rationalize this. Kuro and Luffy are on very different wavelengths here. But Kuro's hair while this fight is going on is getting more unkempt and like, he was like very, very like slicked back and everything, but his hair becomes more disheveled as the fight continues on, as he's like zipping around and getting more and more out of breath fighting Luffy. And then finally, Luffy finishes him off. He kind of grabs Kuro's arms and kind of like, pulls him down so he can't cut him. And then Kuro's like, what? And then he zips his head back. Gum gum bell! And then boom! Knocks Kuro right in the cranium and cracks him right out of the mansion and through a window, and he falls down. Zoro defeats Sham and Bucci in the meantime. It doesn't kill him, just ties him up, right? So they're defeated. Kaya is safe. Usopp's safe, Nami's there, everything's happy, okay? So Luffy wins the day, all right? And so we kind of end out the episode. We kind of go back to the shipbuilding yard where Kaya gives them the Mary. Kaya kisses Usopp and just like, I'm going to be a doctor now. Everything's going to be good. We see Kuro leaving. We see Kuro in a rowboat leaving the island, right? And so we also see Garp kind of like leaving as well. And it's just like, oh, don't worry, Kobe, you did fine. He's like, but I failed. He's like, no, you did exactly what I intended you to. You flushed out the pirates, right? So as the Straw Hats get on the Mary, we have a little moment there where all the Straw Hats join, and Usopp joins as well, of course. They get on the Mary, and we have an orchestral rendition of We Are, like dun 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 dun. And as the Mary is sailing away from Syrup Village, Luffy's of course sitting on the figurehead. Nami's like looking at the compass and like, oh my god, this ship's incredible. Zoro just goes into a room and just lays on a hammock and goes to sleep. And Usopp goes in the kitchen and grabs some popcorn, and he's like, this is great, so they get to hang out in the Mary a little bit there. Kuro escapes. So I think it's, hey dude, we're doing Logtown season 2. I'm sorry I said I wasn't going to say things for future, but if we're doing Logtown at the beginning of season 2, we cannot maybe just have Buggy in Logtown. Maybe we can have Kuro return. We could have Kuro meet up with Django and be like, let's kick the shit out of that Straw Hat guy at Logtown. And maybe Kuro and Buggy and Alvida and Django all join up at Logtown together, and maybe that's where they meet up. It could happen. Kuro's not dead. He escapes the island, right? So Garp notices the Mary escaping. So this is a scene very similar to the end of Ennie's lobby. That's basically what this is parallel to. So Garp is approaching the ship, and then Luffy kind of looks in the spyglass and sees Garp and is just like, Grandpa? And then that's the end of the episode. It's the end of episode 4, okay? So we're finding out that Garp is Luffy's grandfather way earlier on in the story, but we're going to find out more about Garp later on, so I don't want to give too much away about why Garp is doing this specifically now, but there's a reason for all of it, and I think it makes sense, especially when you factor in Garp's personality. So there's that. But you know what? Episodes 3 and 4 of this show, really good. Like I said, the first time watching it, if you're just going from like the first time ever, episode 1 and 2, and then episode 3, there's going to be a dip in like the pace of everything. But then it picks back up again in 4, and then the next episodes with the Baratier. I'm a huge fan of the Baratier arc in the East Blue. That's one of my favorite arcs. So it might actually be my favorite, even more than Arlong Park. I really like the Baratier arc. So we'll see when we get to that. But that was episodes 3 and 4. Let me know what you thought of the episodes, what you think about Usopp's and the way Usopp's character, the way he's portrayed by Jacob, Kuro's character, the fight scenes, how they've worked in Zoro's backstory. I think that was a clever way of doing that. They didn't have the Island of Rare Animals, but they have a little homage to that in the garden. That was nice, little Easter eggs in the background. What did you think about the omission of Django, the changing around of Kuro's plan a little bit, the death of Mary, all that kind of stuff? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching and Jack D. Lantern signing out. Later.